Hello, I'm Rebecca Farnum. This is Ramblings with Rebecca, and we're going to get right to it. Should Scotland be an independent country? That is the question that I'm not actually going to answer it. Nice try. That's the question that's going to be asked of the Scottish electorate in a referendum to take place on the 18th of September 2014. One of the reasons that I was particularly keen to come to Scotland for the second year of my Marshall tenure, in particular since I was going to be doing international law, was because I thought being around during the year leading up to this referendum, you know, just hearing conversations in pubs, sitting in law classrooms, and hearing lectures, etc., would be really cool, just to see how the conversation goes. This has been a long time in the making. Some would say centuries. England and Scotland have not exactly always been on the same footing as far as whether or not they're, you know, the same country, nation, state, whether or not they should be in power, who should be in power, where power should be held, etc. As things currently stand, Scotland is one of the 4 countries within the United Kingdom, the other being England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. But for some years now, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland have all been pressing for devolution. The process of transferring or delegating authority from a central, bigger power to a lower level, particularly, of course, by a central government to local or regional administration and authorities in some ways. So the UK central government, which is based in London, primarily we think of through the Parliament, has been giving more and more kind of domestic controls to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So they all have their own parliament, they hold their own elections, they're responsible for most of what happens kind of within their regional borders. Again, as we talked about yesterday, a bit of an analogy with state control and state governments within the United States. You vote for a state governor, you also vote for, the president of the country. So some parallels there. However, it's been a process of kind of pulling power back rather than set up from the get-go. And, there's kind of a constant tug of war in some ways for what is and what isn't, in whose control. The referendum itself has been up for that question of devolution. At one point, when when a referendum was suggested, there was a question about whether or not that was actually even necessarily legal. Some people would say, well, yes, of course it's legal, because really we're just asking for kind of an advisory opinion. So the Scottish government and Scottish MPs know whether or not the majority of Scots say, yes, please make us independent if you can. Others would say, well, no, that's not really legal. There are questions of whether or not it would be binding, what all a referendum would entail, that kind of thing. Eventually, on the 13th of March, I want to say, this year, so 2013, so just this past spring, the Scottish government and Her Majesty's government came into an agreement about the referendum. So specific legal authority has been granted to the Scots to hold this referendum and to give it some kind of weight. So all over Edinburgh there are signs, all over Scotland there are signs, and lots of political conversation, Free Scotland, versus like, woohoo, Union, and all of these things. Lots of interesting language. Huge debates over what an independent Scotland would actually mean. Lots of questions raised. The main rationale with the UK is, Scotland has, economic strength. There are going to be defence arrangements. They'll continue to have a relationship with the UK, and then also just the, kind of existing relationship with supranational bodies like the European Union, the UN, those kind of things. However, how all of those details would actually work out is kind of up in the air. Lots of conversation, things are constantly being announced, people are, stating intentions and that kind of thing. But the referendum itself just asks, should Scotland be an independent country? So it doesn't actually say, with, taking on the euro, or with keeping the British pound, or, with its own military, things like that. So lots of details, and I get to hear all the fights over the details in the pubs this year, and it's going to be grand fun. So who knows what will happen?